I know I'm a little bit late to the party, but I'm gonna go ahead and talk about this anyway. What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the Apple special event that just happened on April 20th. This is the first event that Apple has held in April in 10, maybe even 11 years, and there was quite a bit more hardware announced at this event than anyone had expected. First off, we gotta talk about that iMac. When they introduced it in the keynote, the first angle they showed of it was that side profile, and when I saw that, I thought, oh cool. They made it colorful, and they made it boxy, just like the Pro Display XDR. And then they showed the back, and I was like, where did all the ports go? And then I thought, alright, fine, whatever. And then they showed the front. It doesn't look good, guys. I'm gonna be honest, it looks bad. I don't like it. Why are the bezels white? I thought we were done with white bezels, especially on computers. White bezels just don't do it. They're terrible. They look terrible. And aside from that, the chin is still there. The chin is still on the iMac and it no longer has an Apple logo, so to me it just kind of looks like a cheap, colorful display that you'd buy for your kid from Best Buy or Walmart. Aside from the atrocious look of the front of this thing, the back actually looks pretty cool. I like the vibrant colors. I don't think I'd really rock any of them. Maybe the silver one, but again, those white bezels on the front just kill it for me. Anyway, let's move on to the port selection. Now, on the back of the baseline $1,300 iMac, you get two ports. You get two ports, just two Thunderbolt ports, and that's it. No Ethernet, no SD card slot, no nothing. Just two Thunderbolt 3 ports and a headphone jack, and we will get into that in just a little bit here. Stepping up to the mid and top tier iMacs, they do have two additional USB-C ports. Now you'll notice I said USB-C and not Thunderbolt, and that's because only 2 of the 4 ports on the mid and top tier iMacs are Thunderbolt enabled. This is just a limitation with the Apple M1 chip. They didn't announce any new Apple Silicon, they just stuck the M1 chip inside the new iMac. Also, regarding that mid and top tier iMac, they do have an Ethernet port, it's just not in a space that you would expect it to be. Take a look at that power connector on the back of the iMac. It doesn't look normal, does it? No, it's because it's proprietary. It's now magnetic, which is kind of cool. I do like that they color matched the actual plug itself and the braided cable to whatever color iMac you choose. And once you get to that external power supply, which is another gripe I have with this iMac, you'll see that the mid and top tier iMacs do have an Ethernet port built into that external power supply. However, the baseline $1,300 iMac does not. And on the topic of the external power supply, that's another thing that I do not like about this new iMac. I don't like having external power supplies taking up space underneath my desk. They get hot, and it's just not pleasant. I would much prefer to have an internal power supply, but because Apple is obsessed with making everything so obscenely thin, they moved to an external power supply. It kind of looks like a MacBook power brick. And on the topic of making the iMac as thin as possible, that is also why the chin is still there. In the keynote, they showed that they crammed every single component of this thing into the chin. You'll see the speaker array down there, you'll see the fans, and you'll see the logic board. They could have just made it a little bit thicker and taken away the chin, but no, they gotta make it as thin as possible. One thing I do want to say about that is that this iMac is 0.1 millimeters thinner than the original iPhone, and crappy design and stupid obsession with making a desktop as thin as possible, that is impressive. This thing has a 4.5K display and it's an entire full-on computer that runs macOS, and it is thinner than the first iPhone by 0.1 millimeters. Another thing you'll notice missing from the back of the new iMac is that SD card slot, and I hate that. I hate that they did that. I hated when they did it to the MacBook Pro in 2016, and I hate that they're doing it to the iMac now. Guys, these are so important for videography and photography because 90% of cameras record onto these SD cards, and not having an SD card slot built into your machine sucks. And that's one of the reasons I bought this MacBook Pro instead of a new one. Now onto that headphone jack. It's now on the left side of the iMac, and the reason they did that is again because they wanted to make it as thin as possible. The depth of a headphone jack is actually deeper than the thickness of this new iMac, which is why they had to move it over to the side. Now, this poses an issue for people who like to use external speakers with their iMac, because you now have to plug into the side and just have a cable hanging there off the side of your iMac the entire time. And on the topic of speakers, they announced that they have the best speaker system ever in a Mac, and I'm sure that's true. Apple has a pretty good track record of putting really good speakers into their computers. Even this 2014 MacBook Pro right here has really good internal speakers even for 2021 standards. You'll see they also went to a rectangular design on the driver, which is pretty cool because you can displace more air with a rectangular or a square driver than you can with a circular driver of the same size, and more air displacement means more volume. Another note about the new speaker array in this thing is that there are 6 speakers. You've got 2 woofers and a tweeter on each side of the iMac, and they showed during the keynote that the woofers are out of phase with each other. Now, you typically don't want that, especially when the 2 drivers are in the same enclosure, because they kind of work against each other when they're moving like this. They're fighting against each other to push air out of the box, because you've got one driver pushing air out of the box while the other is pulling air back into the box. However, it does look like that they are in 2 separate enclosures, so it probably won't be an issue. But their reasoning for doing this was to reduce unwanted vibration. How much vibration can drivers that look to be about this big make? I don't think it's that much, but I'm sure it does still sound incredible. One last thing I want to talk about with this iMac is the new keyboards. Well, new keyboards. They finally replaced the eject key on the Magic Keyboard. It's about time. And on the baseline tier iMac, it is now a lock button. But on the mid and top tier iMacs, that button has a Touch ID sensor, which is pretty cool. However, the keys are still not backlit. It's 2021 and Apple is releasing computers that include a keyboard that isn't backlit. Not cool. And yes, the new mice, the new color matched mice, still charge from the bottom. This iMac is definitely not for me. I do kind of like the colors. I think they look nice from the back, but the front just kills me, man. I hate the white bezels. I hate the chin. I really do hope that when they come out with the 27-inch replacement that it has a better port selection, black bezels, and hopefully no chin, and hopefully a built-in power supply. So with that iMac out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to the 2021 iPad Pro. This iPad Pro joins the family of Apple products that have the M1 chip. That's right, the new iPad Pro has the exact same chip that the new iMac does. They both run M1s. However, the iPad Pro is still running iPad OS. And the fact that they put an M1 into this iPad tells me that they are planning on putting Pro apps onto the iPad in the near future. Maybe we'll see it at WWDC, but it would be really great to see Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro, maybe even some of the Adobe Creative Cloud suite come to the iPad, because it is now running a full-on M1 chip. The USB-C port on the bottom of this iPad Pro is now Thunderbolt enabled, which is awesome because it enables faster transfer speeds, which again points to the fact that they may be planning on putting Pro apps onto the iPad so you can get faster speeds for importing your photos or videos. They also offer a 2 terabyte, that's right guys, 2 terabytes in an iPad. That means that you can price this thing up all the way to $2,400 if you include cellular and that 2 terabyte option. That's insane, guys. That's almost double what I spent on my first MacBook Pro almost 8 years ago now. My only real gripe with this new iPad Pro is the fact that they still only have 1 port on it. It needs to have at least 2. For it to be considered a Pro device, having 2 Thunderbolt ports on that iPad would be awesome. And we do know that the M1 is capable of driving 2 Thunderbolt ports, so they could do it. They just didn't want to. If they do end up putting Pro apps on the iPad Pro, it could take another giant step in the direction of replacing the Mac. Guys, the iPad Pro is already a pretty good replacement for a MacBook for a lot of people, especially with the Magic Keyboard they announced for it last year with the trackpad built into it, and the backlit keys. Pretty cool. It could very easily become a MacBook replacement in the near future. Let's go ahead and talk about that new Apple TV. Now, the Apple TV has not been refreshed in about 3.5 years, and I do have 2 of the current gen, or I guess previous gen now, Apple TV 4Ks in the house. I have one up in my room, and I have the one down here in the home theater that I bought for my family in Christmas of 2019. By the way, if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. The new Apple TV is pretty cool. They didn't really add too much to it. They did upgrade the SoC from the A10 Fusion, which was found in the iPhone 7, to the A12 Bionic. The A12 Bionic isn't anything new. It was first seen in the iPhone XS and XS Max back in September of 2018. And I think they did this just to give people a reason to upgrade again in the future. They could have easily just put in the A14 Bionic from the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro series, but no, they put in the 2.5-year-old A12 Bionic from the iPhone XS Max. Both of the Apple TVs I have here are still working fine. I haven't really had any issues with anything on them. However, I have heard of people having issues with dropped frames during video playback or choppy menu scrolling. And on the topic of scrolling through menus, let's go ahead and talk about that new remote. It's pretty nice. It's a nice upgrade. They went back to the circular D-pad from the 3rd generation Apple TV remote. However, it still can be used as a touchpad to swipe through menus quicker. And it also doubles as a kind of click wheel type thing, kind of like the old iPods had back in the day. I think that's awesome. It's a way better way to scrub through video than swiping along the touchpad on the top of the previous generation Apple TV remote. I want to talk about this for just a second. Guys, this has a D-pad built into it, and the amount of people that don't know about that is astonishing. Check it out. All you have to do is tap up, down, left, right on the touchpad, and it functions just like a D-pad would, and then you click down on the touchpad to select whatever you're hovering over. The reason that that's in there is because Apple knew that it sucks having to use a touchpad to swipe through menus. It's terrible. It's so much easier to just use it as a D-pad. But because no one seems to know about the D-pad functionality of the 1st generation Siri remote, I'm sure that's why they decided to put a distinct D-pad back on the new Apple TV remote. A couple other things they did to the new Apple TV remote is they made it thicker, which is good because the current one is kind of uncomfortable to hold because it is so thin. They moved the Siri button to the side of the remote, so it's more similar to using Siri on an iPhone in that you hold the side button to activate Siri. They also finally added a mute button to the Apple TV remote, and that's awesome because there should have been one on there when they announced the 4th generation Apple TV years ago. And of course the new remote still does have lightning for charging and an IR blaster in case you can't control your TV or receiver through HDMI. Now the last thing I want to touch on from the new Apple TV is the addition of color calibration using the front camera of your iPhone. Guys, that's so cool. That's such a great addition for the Apple TV. Basically what you do is you hold your phone against your TV and it flashes colors and brightness and basically tells the Apple TV how to tailor its video output to give you the most accurate color reproduction on your TV. The only downside of this is it only changes the Apple TV's output. It does not touch any other settings on your TV directly. However, Samsung could take some notes from this because they make TVs and phones, and having that functionality for your entire TV would be pretty nice. And the last thing I want to talk about from this event is that purple iPhone 12 and 12 mini. They look good. I like it. Anyway though guys, that is going to be it for this short, really late recap of the Apple April 20th event from 2021. As usual, if you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Come back Wednesday for another Spyro video, and come back next Friday for a full Rantcast episode on this event. Anyway guys, until then, that is going to be it. Thank you for watching.